Disclaimer. Any of the guidance offered by the podcast host, myself, or the podcast guests is our own guidance. We are not liable for any of the actions the podcast listener decides to do. Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. And today I welcome Trevor McGregor to the show. And I'm very excited about hearing about all his expertise, all his experience on the show today. So just a quick introduction to Trevor. So Trevor McGregor, also known as Coach T, has been a real estate investor for over 2 decades now and is a high-performance master coach with over 45,000 one-to-one coaching sessions under his belt. He has worked with clients from around the world, including Fortune 500 executives, doctors, attorneys, high-level real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and even Olympic athletes. They all come to Trevor for one thing: life-changing transformation, both personally and professionally, so that they can achieve more success, more wealth, and more freedom faster than they ever thought possible. Welcome to the show today, Trevor. Glad to have you on.
No. Well, thank you so much, Johnny. So blessed and grateful to be here and excited for you and what the listeners are about to embark on here.
Absolutely. There's lots to unpack. I'm excited. So yeah, Trevor, you've helped people from all walks of life. It sounds like, entrepreneurs in different professions, attorneys, doctors, executives. What really prompted you to go down this route of being a coach? And was it something you were always interested in, or was that kind of a turning moment in your life?
Well, it's a really unique story, Johnny, and I'll try to keep it tight for you and the listener. But you might hear I'm Canadian. I've got a Canadian accent. Grew up in Canada, went to school, studied business in university, went to work in corporate. And then when I was about 29 years old, the corporation was going to do an expansion across Canada. And they said, Trevor, we really value you as an employee. We want you to invest with us. And so what did I do? Well, I thought, well, this is my chance to be rich and young and have the house and the car and all the, things that I wanted. And so I cashed in all of my savings. I even cashed in my retirement savings, my 401k, and I took a second 6-figure loan out against my parents' family home who loved me and believed in me. And I put it all into this expansion plan. And for the first couple of years, it went great until around 2001. And to make a long story short, I remember my partner coming into the office saying, we're expanding too fast. The economy's shifting. We're hemorrhaging cash. We might go under. And I remember calling my wife saying, this is not looking good. We put all our blood, sweat, and tears and money into this. And to make a long story short, that's what happened. It imploded. So there I was in my early 30s. I was married. I had 2 young kids, and I had just lost not only my entire life savings, but I literally put my parents' house at risk. And so it was at a very low point. I was down. I was depressed. I was even suicidal. And I thought, what am I going to do? And my friend said to me, well, you're not going to figure it out. What you need is a coach. And I said, a coach? What's a coach? I don't even know what a coach is, how it works, how much it costs. And he said, you need to find somebody that can see what you're going through and help you get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And so that's what I did, Johnny. I started to look for a coach. And thank God I found one in Vancouver, Canada, who completely took me under his wing. And he said, Trevor, what's happened to you is unfortunate, but you're still a young man. You got to get up and figure out what you're going to do to move forward. And I said, yeah, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said one thing that changed my life forever. He said, have you ever thought of investing in real estate? And I said, real estate? I don't know anything about real estate. He said, you can use other people's money, buy properties, fix them up, refinance them, or rent them or sell them. And he was a successful real estate investor. And so my back was up against the wall and I really had no choice. I followed what the coach said to do. And I started to use other people's money, buy properties, fix them up. And that's when we were going through some nice appreciation at the time. So I did really well. And within 2.5 years of me starting that, not only did I make enough money to pay back all of those failed loans, including my parents' house, but I had a cash flowing portfolio on top of it. And that's when people started to come to me and say, Trevor, you're so successful in buying townhouses and duplexes and fourplexes. Can you teach us how to do it? And I'd say, well, yeah, buy me a drink. Let's have some lunch. I'll sit down. I'll show you my blueprint. And that's when the coaching bug bit, Johnny, where I thought, wow, not only do I love real estate and I love people, but I love helping people. And so I'll put a pin in it there for you to reflect on it. But that's where the journey started, was because of my failure. And that's where I believe that there is no failure. There's only feedback. And then I got a lot of feedback, which totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Powerful. You got yourself a coach. Was it like the first coach you got was an expensive coach that you invested in?
It wasn't expensive because I didn't have any money, but
Mm,
what it was a stepping stone to a coaching group where I found my coach and mentor.
mm,
And that's where I had to find a little bit more money to pony up for it. But it's
mm,
like Warren Buffett says, the best investment you can make is
mm.
in yourself. And so I scraped together the money that this coach required. And I'm really glad I did because looking back at my journey, I would have never been able to do that on my own. I would have never had the, accountability. I would have never had the goal setting and the mindset work that it took to go from down and out to where I really wanted to be. And that's where the story gets even more interesting because as I fell in love with coaching, I had an opportunity to then go work with and for the man, the myth, the legend, Tony Robbins. As I became one of Tony's coaches and I went up through the ranks of elite coach to master platinum coach and literally became one of Tony's go to guys for business owners, franchise owners, real estate investors, doctors, attorneys, Fortune 500 executives. And it got so busy at Robbins that people started to ask for me by name. And so as I worked for Tony, which was an amazing experience for 5 years, I then got to 2017 where I literally had to decide, was I going to stay with Tony and coach or was I going to go out on my own? And that's when I chose to leave Robbins, go out on my own and create Trevor McGregor International and Trevor McGregor Coaching to where now I've done this for the past couple of decades. And I've now completed over 45,000 coaching sessions. 45,000, that's an actual statistic. And you'll hear my voice is raspy because I'm on the phone all day or Zoom helping people navigate business and life. But I'll tell you this, there's nothing that fills up my cup more than doing this personal development work and business strategy.
I love that. I'm so glad you found your passion and you're helping a lot of people. Trevor, what is your definition of coaching? Because it's thrown out there a lot, but I'd love to hear what you would define as coaching.
Well, thank you, Johnny. And I would first say that not all coaches are created equal.
Mm,
Anyone can hang out their shingle today and say that they're a coach, but a real coach to me is somebody that is a co creator of a journey where they literally start to take a look at who you are. What are your beliefs? What are your values? What are your rules? Right? What are you optimizing for? And really helping you to not only create the roadmap or the recipe that's going to take you there, but help support you with the systems, the people, the processes, the partners, the capital. Even leveraging AI today is super important as business owners, have a lot of stuff coming at them. So a coach is somebody that can go in and help you get clear on what you want, why you want it, and then help you to execute on it. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really kind of that is some like kind of giving you a life, helping you with your life map and yeah, moving forward towards that. I love that.
That's really it because some people are, at heart entrepreneurial. Some people are more corporate and they're working a W-2. Some people want to create a side hustle and maybe work in corporate, but start their own part-time business. And so I find that there's never been a dull moment. And in me helping get crystal clear on, who they are, what they want, why they want it, and then optimizing for it where we get rid of any limiting beliefs that they might have. We start to create a strategic plan. We start to create systems that support that plan. We start to really look at time management because at the end of the day, what you do with your time is going to tell you where you're going to go. And then we execute and I hold them accountable. So I really find it fascinating because I really believe, like you do, that, business is a vehicle for growth. And if we're going to be in business, we're going to grow. And at times, there's going to be some weeds in our garden that we got to pull the weeds out. And other times we're planting seeds that can grow into tremendous things, personally or financially or whatever we want. But that's really what I've done for 2 decades now. And it really is my passion.
And you're talking about like business there. And I know a lot of people kind of struggle with like starting a business even though they really want to. Do you find there's a lot of, what do you think the main block is there for those who really struggle from those who really thrive at it?
Well, it's such a great question. And I'd have to be an idiot at this stage not to be able to answer it, but it becomes a self belief, self worth, self wealth, self esteem, and identity. Because we've all got this little thing in our head, Johnny, called the saboteur brain. And the saboteur is that little voice that natters with you that says, be careful. What if you fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if you lose money? What if you hire someone and they quit? Or worse yet, what if you lose other people's money? And so, because that becomes the story and the narrative in our head, we play safe, we stay contracted, we be small. Whereas somebody that's not just interested but committed to getting into it has to overcome all of those saboteur thoughts to step into what we call their sage thoughts. And sage is spelled SAGE, where you see other people that have left corporate and become entrepreneurs. Other people have dipped their toe into real estate. Other people have started e-commerce businesses. Other people have gotten through the doubt, the fear, the worry, and the anxiety and traded in that for courage or faith or gamification or optimism. And so, as a high performance coach, I've seen it all where men and women around this beautiful planet, or teams of people, or groups of people, they all have the doubts, the fears, the worries, and the anxieties. But if we bring in something called the law of polarity decrees that there is potential on the other side of it. There is success waiting for you. There is an opportunity to make impact and income. And it really boils down to whether they're going to listen to the identity that says they can't, or they're going to step into the identity that says they can.
I remember Tony has a quote, one of the strongest forces is the human, I can't quite get it right, but it's around the need to be consistent with your identity that Tony quotes. One of the strongest.
That's the exact
forces.
quote. That's the exact quote, Johnny. I'll give you tremendous props. It's the strongest force in the human personality
Yeah.
is the need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. And how we define ourselves is our identity. So if we say we're too old, we're too young,
Mm.
we're not educated enough, we're too educated, it's crazy for me to hear all of those things come out of people. But it's not surprising when we really learn that science has proven that we have roughly 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And out of those 60 to 80,000 thoughts in our head a day, 75 to 80% of them are negative or are survival based. And because they're negative or survival based, and because we have more references to the past than we do the present or the future, we tend to make decisions from the past. And the past is all the reasons why you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. What if you fail? What if you get criticized? Because in today's world, the minute that somebody says, hey, I'm going to start something new, or I'm going to start a side hustle, or I'm thinking of buying a franchise, or I'm thinking of buying a real estate, Uncle Bob comes out and says, that's not safe. I wouldn't do that. Interest rates are really high, or the government's not, doing what they should be doing. And there's already somebody trying to pull you down, like the crabs in the bucket analogy, where a coach doesn't do that. The coach cheerleads you and champions you carefully and methodically to make sure that you're absolutely defiantly committed, not just interested, but defiantly committed to not living what we call an average life.
Mm.
Because there are people that will work W-2 jobs for the rest of their life, and that's okay. But there are also people that will no longer work for someone else to make them rich. There are people that will no longer trade time for dollars. There are people that will no longer settle for ordering off the value menu at restaurants when they can go out there and create impact that creates income, where now they can buy the steak and lobster or whatever they want. And so it's a very subtle thing where, we're expected to do it on our own. But I find that the world has sped up so fast, and we got so much coming at us today with social media and, the news and what's going on in the world, that we play safe and we play small. Well, not under my watch and not under my guidance. I'm known for getting people to step up and step into their highest identity and absolutely explode their results, not only professionally, but personally as well.
I was going to ask you, some people are like living their dreams, some people may not be, and some people may be in a situation, whether it's a job, relationship, whatever they're in, maybe a combination, and they know there's more for them in life. They know they want to move. So do you believe the main thing is that's holding them back is that identity and the scarcity of things going on in the world?
It really is. It's definitely a scarcity mentality, and the polar opposite of that is an abundant mentality, where I can tell you that the universe has anything that you want available to you right now. If you want to make more money, it's available to you. If you want to get in better shape, there's ways to do that. If you want to improve your relationship, there's ways to do that. Or maybe you want to get out of a relationship that isn't serving you and into a better one.
Mm.
Maybe you are dealing with young children. Maybe you're dealing with aging parents. Maybe you're, stuck doom scrolling on social media, and you're letting social media control your mind, instead letting, new thoughts and new feelings and new visions and new possibilities control your mind. So again, after doing as many calls as I had, and we travel the world, and not only do we coach, but we also put on, retreats. We do men's retreats. We do women's retreats. We do couples retreats, right? And whether those are in North America or we're going to Japan next month, After that, we're doing one in Italy this summer. We're big believers that sometimes, men and women feel like they're an island, but once you elevate your game and you get around other like-minded people that are already moving in the direction you want to move towards, you know the old saying, Johnny, that a high tide lifts all boats. And the people you hang around with are the people that you start to emulate. And the people you start to emulate really are out there where I know that high performers don't just want one stream of income, they want multiple streams of income. I know high performers don't just want, to live in one place. They want to travel like you and I do. So whether you're in the UK or you're in California, I'm the same way. I'm in Australia today. I'll be in Japan in 2 weeks, and I'll be in Europe in the summer, and then I'll be back to North America. And I don't say that to beat on my chest. I'm saying that it's available to anybody that's defiantly committed to figuring it out. And if you go back in my story, there was one point I was so broke I couldn't even afford to pay attention, but I got up and I started to read books. I started to listen to audios. I started to hire coaches. I started to go to these types of events. And fast forward to today, my life is radically different than it was when I was young 30-year-old Trevor. So again, I believe that whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're in the UK or North America, Australia or Asia, for the committed, there's always a way to take the first couple of steps towards what you want. And when you scramble up steps 1 and 2, it reveals to you steps 3 and 4. And when you scramble up 3 and 4, it reveals 5 and 6. And that's really when sparks fly and magic happens.
Mhm. Going up those steps. For the individual, something came to me there. For the individual who's maybe that they've like attempted like many different things to like shift their life. Maybe they've invested in some coaching programs. They tried this, they've tried that, but they just feel like I'm just not getting results. What guidance would you offer that person?
Well, there's a couple of loops you're opening as a high performance coach for me. And the first one is that God's delays are not God's denials.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that will buy a coaching program or hire a coach and expect the results to show up on a silver platter overnight. That's not typically how the world works because of this little thing, called the law of gestation. And the law of gestation, also known as the law of planting seeds, means that when you plant a seed in fertile soil, you don't come back the next day and go, where's my oak tree? You got to water it. It's got to attract the nutrients from the soil, the water from the clouds, the heat from the sun. And then and only then does a little root pop up. And as that root grows and it's nurtured, it can turn into a beautiful oak tree. So I think the first loop is a lot of people are impatient, Johnny, and a lot of people want what they want overnight without really putting in the work. The second one is, and this is something that I had to learn the hard way because I've had tremendous success, but I've also had epic failure. I've made money and I've lost money. I've been married and I've been divorced, right? I've had children, and unfortunately, I've had to bury one of my own children. We lost a child, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody, right? My best friend and business partner went into the hospital for day surgery one day, and he passed away and never came out. My mom got cancer. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So when I really look at all of those experiences, I'm still here. I'm still standing, and I'm stronger than I ever was before all of that adversity because there's a great quote in Think and Grow Rich where Napoleon Hill says that adversity brings with it the equivalent advantage. And I never understood it until I went through the tough stuff, but the universe brings with it the seed of equivalent advantage, which means that every dark cloud has a silver lining if you look for it. And at the time, we don't like looking for it. We're angry, we're mad, we're upset. We say we invested money, we invested time, we invested energy, and we didn't get to our outcome. But sometimes the universe has a different way of sending us down a different path where maybe we got to learn something first. Maybe we got to grow. Maybe we got to experience. And like I said, I've had tremendous success, but I've also had enough failure in business and in life to have what I call, a real capable eye for, the law of polarity. That you can't have good coaching programs without there being some not so good coaching programs. You can't have good real estate investments without getting a money lesson sometime. You can't have a relationship where everything is rosy without some relationships ending up in separation. And it's not good or bad or right or wrong until we assign it a meaning because we're all meaning making machines and we're making meanings out of everything. But as we make meanings out of everything, we also rationalize why it happened to us. It was the coach. It was the president of the US. It was the economy. It was the extreme weather. And if we continue to rationalize all these things, but we stop and we reflect back on what's really going on, we tend to tell ourselves rational lies. We lie to ourselves why it was the coach, or why it was the salesperson, or why it was the ex spouse, or why it was this or that. When really you look at it from the bigger picture, and there's that old saying that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And
Mm.
so that's what I do as a coach as well. We might have a certain meaning about some coaching program or some money loss or some health or relationship issue. But when you really look through it at a different lens, you start to see the whole thing showing up as a gift that then is meant to send you in a better direction than you even wanted to when something didn't work out. And I know that's a fire hose, but I'll throw that over to you. Does that
No,
land with you, Johnny, given your experience and your background?
Yeah, definitely what you said. Like what came up for me there as well was taking the responsibility. I picked that out of what you said there. And one of the guys, one of my favorite teachers, Peter Sage, as I mentioned to you before the show, has a great phrase. And he says, I'm sure it's a variation because, we hear different people say different things in personal growth, but he says, outer world follows inner world. And when I first
Yes.
heard that, I was like, interesting. Makes sense. I don't disagree. I think that's a great quote. But then I went through a bit more life, like through the few years of hearing that. And it was like, because it's like, okay, that's showing up, that pattern of dating. Maybe there's something to look in with me and then change, you fix that. Similar with like opportunities in life. It's like, well, that's difficult. Oh, hang on. No, looking at myself. That's what I took away from one of the big things you were saying about taking that personal responsibility, because it can be hard. Personally, I find like sometimes to look at it, it's like, but then it's also empowering in my personal belief.
Well, I love it. We're singing from the same song sheet where you're either going to be disempowered by not achieving it, or you're going to have learned something and you step into empowerment to go try something else or try it again. Right. And when dealing with, aging parents and people passing away and money lessons and health lessons and relationship lessons, it's hard. And I'm the first one to say that you really don't like going through it. Oftentimes we call it the dark night of the soul, but I'm telling you, God doesn't waste the pain. That God or the universe or source or infinite intelligence, call it whatever you want, is operating with and for you at all times. But when you're going through the fire or you're going through your own version of being broke or you're going through your own health crisis, it doesn't feel like the universe has your back. But I can assure you that it's really where a setback is a setup for a comeback, that the universe has got something even more in store for you if you stay the course, if you get up, if you dust yourself off, if you hire a coach, if you surround yourself with the right people, like you or like you're talking about Peter Sage there. There are people out there who have already navigated so much in their journey, kind of like myself, where we just want to give back. We want to help others who are navigating a tough time find that light in the tunnel. And as they start to move towards the light in the tunnel, it gets bigger, it gets brighter, the darkness starts to dissipate. And I'm telling you, it's a fast paced world we live in. I mean, there's so much going on at the time we record this podcast where a lot of people are probably saying, well, what's the point? Well, believe it or not, what's going on right now has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. There's always been light and there's always been dark, right? And I'm telling you, we're here on purpose and with purpose because I feel that the only way to get people out of the darkness is to shine the light. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the dark squares and the light share squares for me personally. And I think I've definitely been guilty of it, of like, oh, okay, things aren't fitting my pitches. And then having those tough emotions of like frustration or sadness sometimes, anxiety. And it's like, hang on, life's not designed to be all on the light squares all the time. And
That's
then,
right.
yeah, that's what I
It's
take.
called it's called polarity, and we can't have day without night, or black without white, or masculine energy without feminine energy, or you can't have the North Pole without the South Pole. Therefore, you can't have a coaching program or a real estate deal or an e-commerce business work out without some of them not working out. And that's just the way it is, right? That's that law of polarity. But I'm also a big believer that, you know what, you can't just focus on the problem. You have to start focusing on the solution. And that's where we come up with the fact that there's only four little S words that you got to really focus on at any time you want to get out of a situation that's not serving you and into one that does. And so if you're ready, I'm happy to get into those 4S words right now. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's go for it.
You got it. And number one, the very first one we all must start with, me included, is our state management. And state management really refers to your focus, right? Are you focused on the problem or are you focused on the solution? Are you focused on blaming and shaming someone? Or are you focused on saying, well, that didn't quite work out the way it went? I'm going to try this way, right? Because it's our focus, it's our language, it's really, all of those things where average people will blame and shame and deflect and defend, right? Where high performers see it as it is, but not worse than it is. So you got to start by asking yourself one question. Where's my state? Which really means where's my focus? That's number one. Number two is my favorite one, Johnny, and that is your story, right? Your story. And again, your story is your identity. You're either going to be a victim to what's going on to you, or you're going to choose to step out of victim and into victor on your way to victory. And it's not easy to do, but if you play the poor me card all the time, I mean, think about it in sports. If you think about somebody that's an exceptional football player like Tom Brady, right? He's going to drop the ball, fumble the ball, throw a pass, it doesn't work out, or even worse, get tackled. He doesn't have time to cry in his soup. He's got to get back in the huddle and practice something I call speed of recovery, where he remembers he's a high performer, he's a football player, he's going to get back in the huddle, call the next play, and then he bombs it for a touchdown, right? Most people aren't like Tom Brady. Most people aren't like LeBron James. Most people aren't like, Tiger Woods, or most people aren't like, some famous sports person. Could be cricket, could be footy, could be anything, where the best of the best of the best own their state, but they even more importantly own their story. So before I go to the final two, I'll bring you in. What do you think about state and story to kick this off?
State is, for me, like, I always think everything starts with energy for me, and then that kind of like the thoughts kind of follow. So I'm a big fan of breath work personally, and exercise in the morning where possible.
That's it.
I don't always like getting up for it, but and don't always do it 100%. I'm always honest, but like for me, it's kind of like allows the thoughts to follow from the body. Breath
Yes.
work's been a life changer for me, and that kind of helps me with my state.
I love that. I mean, breath work, meditation, hydration,
Mm.
proper sleep. I mean, we're talking about the fundamentals that will help you to focus and they will help you to get into the right story or the right identity.
And the third S, Trevor?
Yes. The third S, Johnny, is the big one, and that is your standards,
Mm.
right? And I'm telling you that average people have a different standard than high performers, right? Where you got to step out of the wrong state and story and raise your standards, because your standards are really how you commit to doing anything, right? And I'll tell you this, as a high performance coach, I can tell the quality of somebody's ability to move forward by where they're willing to raise the bar and raise those standards. So if we've got your state, your story, and your standards, the fourth and final one is your strategy, right?
Mm.
Your strategy. That is, what is your roadmap? What is your recipe? What is your blueprint that's going to take you from where you are to where you want to be? But here's the absolute truth, that you never want to step into the fourth S in your strategy without first checking in with your state, your story, and your standards. What do you think?
I remember Tony talking about that. He used the three S's without the standards, but he talked about the standards as well. Yeah, the strategy is often, I tell you what, I get better idea. Like, I'm a bit of a like recovering achiever. It's like how many things I fit in a day kind of thing, It's like, but I've actually dedicated more time to what I call the inner world, like checking in inside. And even though I'm like, well, actually it'd be like more beneficial right now to go over my sales like training again and all that kind of thing. I'm like, no, let's just walk in silence with some binaural beats if I have to. And it's like suddenly ideas come to me, which is the strategy, because I'm
That's
focusing
right.
on the state. So yeah, I was
I love that.
basically like, what is the strategy?
That's it. I think that that's where people have really lost the ability to get quiet, to meditate, to journal, to create what I call thinking time. I mean, when you think of some of the greatest inventors on the planet, people that have patent after patent after patent, it's not because they forced it. It's that they opened up their mind to possibility. And that's when we start to download things from the universe. So it doesn't matter if you're looking for a breakthrough in your finances or in your career or in your health or in your relationships. It doesn't matter what the category is. If you're so busy and you're so angry and you're so frustrated about all of them, and you don't create that thinking time or walk around with binaural beats or meditate or, even just be, you'll never ever get it as quickly as you would if you got quiet and got silent. And that's something that I've had to do because, again, we run many businesses. We have a coaching business, a consulting business, a publishing company. We own real estate. We do retreats all over the world. And really, I could work 24/7, 365 when you stack all of my client calls on top of that. But I also carve out time, Johnny, and protect time for thinking time, for getting quiet, for getting into nature. There's nothing like walking into a forest or walking by a stream or a lake or the ocean to really remember that we are part of nature. We come from nature and we're going to return to nature. And that's where that old adage comes up. Are you really being a human being or are you a human doing? Because most people are doing instead of being. So I honor you with what you shared there.
I like that you're carving out thinking time. Is it more for you? I'm just curious, is it more like having an intentional question behind your thinking time and writing it down? Or do you just go, I'm going to have some silent time and allow what comes up to come up?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a little bit of both, but I err on the side of not prompting it.
Mm.
Just getting quiet, just getting into my breath, getting into my body. My heart is beating almost 100,000 times a day, and I'm not having to pay for it. My lungs are taking in oxygen. My stomach is digesting food. Everything works perfectly, and I don't have to think about it. So I'm not going to over squeeze when I'm trying to, just meditate or have some quiet time or thinking time. But I really find that some people, they've got monkey mind, that when they try to have quiet time or try to meditate or try to journal, they just can't seem to do it. And that's where I'll use the visual of having, a beautiful blue sky. And perhaps, a thought comes to me where I feel that thought is like a cloud and the cloud enters the frame. And then I see the cloud and I acknowledge the cloud, but then I see the cloud disappear. And then I've got a real, blue sky where it's absolutely no thought. And so the more we can manage the monkey mind and the more we can manage those clouds crossing the screen of our mind and go back to just being whole and real and present with ourselves, that's when ideas start to really come to me. Where there's been times I've either been lying down on the meditation bed or I've been in the shower, right? And I've got to get out and I've got to grab a pad of paper and a pencil and write stuff down. So it's a beautiful thing. And I wish people did more of that.
And it sounds like that's allowing you to be present with your clients because you've got a lot of people to work with, right?
Lots.
Giving them attention I've had some great coaches who are very like focused, very attention when I'm talking to them. That they're like really focused, and I'd like to when I've done it myself, I like to have that intention as well. But sounds like by doing that for yourself, you're able to give even more of that to your clients as well.
1,000%. Absolutely.
Mm, no, that's awesome. Trevor, I want to ask you a little bit about, I'm trying to phrase this question correctly because there's a lot of talk about like healing and then working on like old wounds and patterns that people do. And I think I really, I really know people go through some stuff, some traumas and things like that. But I also know some people can like be held so much back and they're always doing this healing work and not move forward. But there's some people who might be moving forward but trying to like fight all this like stuff in the past that's like and just not looking at it. How do you help a person find the right balance for them for what they need out of like working on those wounds and healing it versus moving forward?
Well, it's a great question. Again, some horrific things have happened, mostly in some of our childhoods where there's true childhood trauma there. But I also believe that, as you work through that, for a lot of people, that becomes the reality and their crutch of why they can't move forward, right? So there's a delicate balance between therapy and really dealing with those childhood wounds versus remembering that the past is exactly that. It's the past. And that if you really want to create a different future from the past, you got to step into the present, right? And that's where we can create a new meaning for what that trauma was, or create a new meaning of what it was like growing up under the roof of a single parent, or growing up with no money, or growing up with whatever. Because once we really, really see and hear and know that that has really been our story for 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years, we can do something called resolve. And resolve is where we get to that place where even though that's happened in our past, We're not going to focus on it. We're going to focus on the present to create what I call the predictable future. Not just the future, but if you do the right things in the right order, at the right time, and for the right reasons, and you're not just interested but committed, you can believe that other people have already done that before you. So again, I go back and we do a personal inventory of where are you at in your career? Where are you at in your finances? Where are you at in your health? Where are you in your relationships, in your parenting, in dealing with aging parents, in travel, in tithing? Doesn't matter what the category is, because if you're living in the past, we got to step out of the familiar past and into the present to get a handle on it, to then say, all right, where do I really want to go? And not just, hope that you can go there, but really resolve and believe that it's as good as done. And that's what separates, a lot of average people from people that really step into high performance where they want multiple streams of income. They want to travel the world. They want to give their kids world schooling experiences instead of just classroom experiences. And it doesn't make the old model bad. It's just that some people believe that there's a new way of thinking and a new way of behaving that can radically improve our quality of life and our fulfillment that's forward rather than going backwards. Does that make sense?
And does it tie back to the four S's to create that new forward reality?
Of course it does. For a lot of people, again, your state is your physiology, your focus, and your language. And I can listen to somebody for 12 minutes, and just by hearing what's coming out of their mouth, saying their language is more consistent with their past than it is their present or their future. Same thing with their focus. Same thing with their identity. Same thing if their standard is low. And I'm not talking about taking your standards, Johnny, and making them 1,000% better. But what I find is if you can improve your standards by 10, 15, or 20%, that's a stepping stone to getting on the right pathway where once you improve it by 10, 15, or 20%, you start to get hungry for it 25 or 30%. It would be like you saying, I'm going to walk around and listen to binaural beats once a month. Whereas if you do it, 4 times a month, it becomes so much fun and you get so much benefit out of it that you want to do it daily. That's what we're talking about. So when you really start to change your state, your story, and your standards, it starts to show up in how you're ready to embark on a new journey strategically. Does that land with you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just not just those little incremental things like
That's
moving
it.
forward. Because I was thinking there also, we often say live from the future you where you want to be, like in the future. Because I was listening to Bob Proctor the other day, and he was saying your current results are people will keep in their past thinking because their current results are like showing that result that comes from the past. So therefore they keep thinking like that. And he was then saying about how you start thinking from the future you to therefore generate future results. So that's kind of also what came to me there as well.
Well, I love that. And again, I had the good pleasure of spending time with Bob Proctor personally. He's a good Canadian man and God rest his soul, but he's absolutely right. When you think about other people, and we can take the pressure off of you or off of me or off of Bob, but look at Elon Musk. Does he live in the past or is he living in the present to create the future? Let's look at Peter Sage. Let's take a look at Tony Robbins. Let's look at Richard Branson, right? So there's something to be said for the old quote that success leaves clues,
Mm.
right? If Bob Proctor says it and you say it and I say it and some of our heroes say it, when would now be a good time to start living more in the present to create a predictable future versus most people that are blaming, shaming, denying, pointing the finger over here, and that's not going to help their circumstances get better. It's just going to make them feel better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Trevor, I want to touch on like one kind of, well, a couple more things, but how can someone know who the right coach is for them if they're like, "Oh, I feel like I need a coach," which I always advise anyone wanting to work on themselves to get a coach. It's done me wonders, but how can they find the right coach for them?
Well, it's such a great question as well. And I'm a big believer, again, that success leaves clues. And where anyone could call themselves a coach these days, you're really looking for somebody that is really, well versed in whatever it is you're trying to achieve. For example, if you wanted to build a business, I've built businesses. If you want to get into real estate, I've got into real estate in a big way. If you want to get into crypto, we could talk about that. If you want to get into, learning how to travel with your family or world school more, it's something my wife and our 3 boys do. So you want to find somebody that's already doing or already done successfully what it is you're trying to do, but you also got to understand that it's going to take an investment of 4 things, right? And these four character traits are things that I think people have to look in the mirror at before they even go out there looking for a coach. Where number one, you got to be committed, right? If you're going to go work with somebody and put down money, you got to be committed to making the improvements. Number two, you got to be decisive, right? You're going to need to decide, is this coach a good fit for me, or do I need to go look for somebody better? So in addition to be committed and decisive, you've got to be coachable. That's where you empty up your cup of the things that you think are going to work, and you leverage a coach to help you fill it back up with what does work in today's world. So being committed, decisive, and coachable also means you got to be resourceful. It's going to take time to find the right coach. It's going to take money. It's going to take intention. It's going to take energy. But the rewards for finding somebody that can co-create what you want faster than you could do on your own is what we call turning decades into days. I don't want you to take 10 years to figure it out when you could leverage a coach, which I call a who, or even what Dr. Ben Hardy is calling, and I'm working with Dr. Ben Hardy right now, the science of scaling. He calls it a super who, where a who is really good, but a super who is worth 10 who's. So imagine what your life looks like if you find a who, or better yet, a super who that can help take you by the hand and show you the path to prosperity.
And Dr. Hardy, the willpower doesn't work author.
Dr. Benjamin Hardy has written books like Who Not How, The Gap in the Gain, X is Easier Than 2X, The Science of Scaling. I mean, he's a force right now in the United States, but he really does believe that there is a right way to go at your business. And there's also a wrong way, or a way that's more of a linear path to growing instead of what he calls the quantum path. That is, how can we optimize and maximize what you're doing and really achieve it in far less time than what most people would even believe. And it's amazing work.
I like what you said also, going back about finding someone who's got the results that you want in that way. I did that with a couple of men's coaches, and wow, did me wonders.
Me too. And I love that you're saying that, because I'm going to say it as well, that I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. I've got tons of coaches, tons of mentors, people from all walks of life all over the world that are still working with me and kicking me in the butt daily, if not weekly, to help me take that next level of ascension, because I don't profess to know it all, but I do know and profess enough to be dangerous. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, walking always, like, it's awesome that, like, you're sharing that you've always got coaches always improving. I heard a quote that's like saying, I can't remember if it's like one of the professional soccer players, like, or football players as we call them, like Messi or Ronaldo, and it was like, they have coaches, so why wouldn't you, kind of thing.
That's
So
right.
I love the way.
Not only do they have coaches, they have offensive coaches, defensive coaches, trainers, people that help them watch game film, people that help them prepare their bodies, their nutrition. And they are the best of the best in the world, right? Just like sports athletes. You look at Tom Brady, you look at LeBron James, you look at Tiger Woods, you look at some of the tennis players. They don't just have one coach. They've got multiple coaches helping them to be the best in the world. How about you?
Not alone. Hey, Trevor, I know you're doing so much to help people. You got so much out there to support people. I'd love to know, as we wrap up today, where can the listener find you to find out more about your work? If there's any particular resources you'd like to share, and yeah, is there a final point you'd like to wrap our conversation up with today?
Well, thank you, Johnny. And first off, thank you for having me on your show. I love your show and I love the work you're doing. And it's very conversational. And I feel that we've really, given the listener something where they can go back and, re-listen to this and come up with some areas that they want to focus on to improve. So thank you for giving me the platform. The second thing is, really, I've got a gift for you and the listener, where I call it my Rich Beyond Belief mini audio series, where I've taken 8 really tight short recordings and put them into what's called a private podcast, where you get it for free. And you'll learn the best of the best of the best coaching tools and frameworks that I use with my own high-paying clients. And to get that free of charge, all you need to do is go to trevormcgregor.com/confidence. Again, trevormcgregor.com/confidence. You'll be able to download it to your smartphone or your desktop immediately and start listening to it while you're working out or driving the kids to soccer or working around the house. But I really believe that these are some of the 8 of the best tools that, if you apply them in your business, in your life, you'll start to see a whole new level of success coming your way. The third thing is, if you want to find out more about how a one-to-one coaching structure works with me or one of my amazing coaches across the US, I've got 5 coaches that work with me, underneath me, to support more people. All you have to do again is go to trevormcgregor.com. You can scroll down and read a little bit about what we do to help people. You can read some unbelievable testimonials, and you can click the apply for a discovery call button where we'll get on the phone or Zoom with you for 30 to 45 minutes, complimentary, to hear more about who you are, where you're at, what you're doing, and what a coaching program could do to help you get there faster. So, again, for all of that, just go to trevormcgregor.com. And for the free gift, it's trevormcgregor.com/confidence.
Thank you, Trevor. That's very generous. That's awesome.
That's it. And from a final parting word, there's a couple things I always like to leave people with. And the first one is, what is your why, right? What is your why? Why do you want to be successful in business? Why do you want to make more money? Why do you want to get in better shape or have a better relationship with your spouse? Because when you really go back and revisit your why, and you might have not just one, but multiple reasons why you no longer want to be an average person, but step in to the life of a high performer, you start to see new ways of thinking and new ways of acting that can move you in that direction. Because when the why is big enough, anything is possible. And number two is hunger, right? How hungry are you for success? How hungry are you to go out there and make more impact? Because we know that when we go out there and make more impact, we tend to make more income. And it's really all about really understanding that we're all going to have to do something to live life. Let's go out there and help others, because if we help others get what they want, we can have everything we want. So check in with your why, check in with your level of hunger, stay tuned to Johnny's podcast, read books, go to events, but really immerse yourself into personal growth, as it is the investment that keeps giving you an ROI. And that's not just a return on your investment, but a ripple of impact.
Ripple of impact. Love that. That's a great acronym. So, yeah, Trevor, thank you so much for your generous gifts and for every golden nugget you've given on the podcast today. Thank you.
You're welcome. You can tell I'm just a wee bit passionate about this stuff, but I honor you and the work you're doing. Again, for anyone that's not just interested, but committed to doing some work with me and my team, I'd be happy to speak with you. And once again, Johnny, thank you for having me on the show.
Awesome. So, yeah, you can find those links in the show notes below. So you can connect with Trevor that way, his team, and get that very generous gift as well. So you'll find those all in the show notes. So a massive thank you, as I said. Thank you for listening today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.